All right, today my guest is Nick Wodner. Nick Wodner is the business owner of NPT Fit, and he's working in the Miami area of Florida. Nick, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to get rolling on all these topics and educate our viewers.
Awesome. And just so we know what we're talking about today, you work with kids and the youth in the area mostly. What's your expertise? What do you work on?
So basically, I've been doing this for like 8+ years, sports performance work. I work with all ages throughout the course of the time, but right now I'm currently focusing on ages 8+. We're doing sports performance stuff for any sport. We can cater your program to that specific sport, the specific position. So whether you're trying to do basketball, tennis, whatever it is, I can help you with that.
Excellent. Good. So while we're on the topic, why don't you tell me more about you, what you've been doing, what you're doing now, and what is your focus lately?
So basically, when I originally wanted to work with kids, it was mostly basketball. Like I loved basketball growing up, and it's something that I had a huge passion for. Me myself, I didn't really play like in college or anything like that, just because I was a little bit insecure. So I got it my own way. So I wanted to kind of help the youth because I knew so much about the sport, drills, you know, how to how to improve your skills and all that, that I wanted to kind of help the kids, develop and take them to kind of like the next level. So whether that is making the school team in like fourth and fifth grade, whether that's doing travel teams around the state, getting into college, getting into high school, things like that. So it originally started with basketball. And then over the years, I kind of kept getting like different requests like, hey, do you do soccer? Do you do football? And as a business, you're not going to turn down most opportunities. And other sports I have done in the past before. So I kind of have a background on that. So I just took advantage of those opportunities and, started doing football training, started doing baseball. And lately, I would say within the last couple of years, I got more into like the sports performance aspect of training. So like instead of like a basketball coach that only focuses on like game situations and like X's and O's, I wanted to kind of bring a different dimension of like sports performance where we're working on your core, we're working on strengthening your muscles, we're working on all those different aspects that you need for that specific sport. So, for example, basketball players have different goals and strategies compared to like tennis players. Tennis players need a lot of like lateral agility and lateral speed to kind of get to the ball, quick reactions, to come up to the ball. Basketball, you need to be a little bit stronger because there's a lot of contact. Same with football. So I wanted to kind of dive into like the sports performance aspect. And and that's something that, like I said, started within the last couple of years. I wanted to be known more as a trainer as opposed to like a coach.
Makes sense.
So yeah, so within the last 2 years, I went and got certified through NASM. I did the youth exercise program, the performance training program, and the personal training. And then through DBC Fit, which is like one of the top trainers and facilities technically in the States, it's all about science-based approach to training and biomechanics. So I did like an intro to biomechanics course there where we talk about all the main movements, like the seven main movements. And then I also did a sports performance and athlete development certification through them.
Excellent. And for anybody who's watching, Nick mentioned NASM, which is the National Academy of Sports Medicine. They're one of the most respected certifying companies for personal trainers, and they are also evidence-based um, training, science-based, evidence-based. So that's great. Got a good background. Tell me about youth programming and psychology. We've talked about a few things and we touched on a few topics that we're going to talk about today. Let's start with that. What have you learned over the years? What has been helpful as far as youth programming and psychology?
So when you're dealing with kids, um, I've dealt with all different ages throughout the course of, the past 8 years. I've dealt with anywhere from like 3 year olds up to like, 16, 17 year olds. So I've dealt with all different aspects of it. Most recently, I kind of am focusing more on the ages 8 and up. So I'm trying to work with more of the older kids. And one of the things that I've noticed with kids and just in general is that no matter what your game plan is going into a lesson, it's never going to be that way. So if you write down your lesson plan and you have a specific warm up and, like core work and skill development, the whole thing, most likely you're going to get there and the kid's going to come out of the house and he's going to start complaining that it's too hot outside. That's usually one of the main ones that I get. It's like it's too hot, and if it's like too hot, if the environment isn't like ideal, it's hard for them to give it their all. So understanding like the client and who the kid is, you kind of have to like improvise a little bit when you get there and even a little bit beforehand, knowing, all right, this kid is this certain way. He's going to be like that if this happens. What can I do to make the lesson a little bit more enjoyable for them while also making sure that they develop strength, they develop their skills and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of something that I've seen.
Do you do any
Also,
training
like,
of, sorry to interrupt, do you do any training
okay.
of adults as well?
I've done a few adult trainings as well, and like mostly friends of mine. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, at least with the few that I've done, is just the consistency.
Hmm.
Is like it's like one week they're like so motivated to do it, and then the following week is like I got a lot of work to do. I'm tired. I'm this and that. So it's finding finding the right program, I guess you could say, that caters to their goal, that is going to motivate them to keep going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I ask because you mentioned how oftentimes you'll have a program already set for a kid, and they'll show up and it'll have to be entirely different. And I've worked with mostly adults as a personal trainer throughout my career, and that's been the case too. Is you can spend so long as a personal trainer in programming, making the workouts, and just being really specific on really good stuff that you might do, but that's the case with adults too. They'll show up, something will happen like, oh, it's too hot outside, or whatever. This doesn't feel good in my body today. So you have to change
yeah,
almost everything. And you're right. You have to be able to kind of improvise. In my mind, in my experience, it's been more of a you plan for having structure in your workouts, but a flexible plan because something might happen. So it's almost like having a
yeah,
fallback. Is it like that for you too?
yeah. It's like some. I mean, for the adult aspect of it, and this hasn't happened to me, but it's just like I've heard stories of this and like experiences of this. Is like if you have a client that you're going to work with the next morning or that morning, and the night before that client was out drinking and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and you had like, let's say, a conditioning workout planned in the morning, then once they get in and they tell you that they spent the night partying or whatever, you kind of have to scrap that conditioning plan and go into more like a, maybe it could be like a core workout, could be like a dynamic warm up, just focusing on movements. So you have to kind of take those things into accountability, that what lifestyle choices are you making, so that we know how to like program your workout for the next day.
Yeah,
So like little things.
it's a great point. Yeah, happens in my experience as well. So I think, yeah, the lesson learned from that is like, if you really want your workouts to count, you have to look at your whole week, your day, make sure you're not going to
Yes.
get in your own way, so you can show up for your workout and do it the right way, right?
Yeah. And I have kids like that too, that I'll get there and they'll be complaining like, oh, my upper back hurts, like my traps. So I'll ask them like, did you like go to like Ninja Lounge or like some trampoline place like the day before? And they're always like, yes.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, so we can't do jumping today.
yeah,
So similar with kids, like you have to like know what they're dealing with so that you can make, because the number one thing as a trainer is to reduce the injury risk.
yeah,
So you have to know like what they're up to, what they're doing, so that when you do get into workout, you're not putting them at risk of injury.
yeah. That makes sense. Excellent. Tell me about training differences for different sports. You already mentioned, for example, with tennis, there's a lot of lateral movement in tennis, getting up to the ball. Um, Tell me more about that. Training differences for different sports.
Yeah. So, or as you know, like they all have different coaches. So like you'll have like a tennis coach, a basketball coach, a soccer coach that basically works on like the in-court stuff. So like basketball coaches will work on the in like things that you're going to do on the court. Soccer coaches, things you're going to do on the field. As a sports performance trainer, you have to know like number one what sport they're doing like before you get into a program design. So like when you get a call, whether it's an adult or a parent for their kid that gives you a call, you always ask them like, all right, what specific sport do you want to do? What are you looking to improve on? Is it like speed and agility? Is it strength? Is it core? Like what are we trying to improve upon? Now, once you got that kind of idea of like what specific sport they want, you can kind of cater your program to that sport and more detailed to that position. So, for example, basketball, you have, let's say, centers, okay? And most of their skill development is going to be like jumping up for rebounds, a lot of strength work to be able to handle, bodies in the paint, and footwork for moves around the paint. So a lot of their stuff is going to be strength work, plyometrics to get improve that height and that speed. And if conversely, if you have like a point guard for basketball, he's handling the ball all the time. So you got to kind of focus more on the ball handling, quick decisions, things like that, being able to see the court. So you have to know what position they're kind of doing. They're playing for that specific sport and cater your program to that. And similar, like I said with tennis, it's like what what is like the main thing for that sport? Let's say football, right? You have like defensive players and they're not running up and down the field for like 3 minutes without stopping. They're doing like, let's say, about a 5 to 10 second sprint as soon as the quarterback says hike. After those 10-second sprints are done, you walk back and you get ready for the next play. So you kind of have to know those things too, like when it comes to conditioning, which is what kind of conditioning drills will work for a defensive back for football, as opposed to like tennis, where you could be sprinting up and down for 30 seconds on a rally. So it's just like the little things like that, understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. You remind me of probably in your training with NASM, reminds me of the SAID principle, SAID, specific
Yeah,
adaptation of imposed demands, right? So I'm basically meaning whatever you are training for, you have to do similar movements to that training, right? Or similar
yeah,
training to what is needed to be done in your sport, right?
yes, exactly.
But it does help, regardless, to be in good shape, right? To be generally fit, strong, have endurance,
Yeah,
that helps too, right?
correct. So Whether doesn't matter what sport you are. At the end of the day, you gotta have like number one, your cardiovascular health has to be good in order to be able to sustain these long periods of running and conditioning. Because yes, you'll probably sprint for 10 seconds, in football, but you are playing like a 60-minute game. So even though you're only sprinting for 10 seconds at a time, you have to be able to be conditioned enough to be able to sustain that for a full 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So, like I said, even though you're training for a specific position and sport, at the end of the day, even with all my clients, we always work on aerobic conditioning. So it's like we'll finish with like 5 minutes of running, 10 minutes of running to get their levels up so that they can sustain it for longer periods of time.
So then you really need to do both then, right? If you want to be a good athlete, you have to be in general shape, in good shape, but also you have to train for what the game calls for, right?
Correct. If you for athletic performance, you do want to do both. Um, Not necessarily on the same day. So you probably split them up, however your routine is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursday, do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So you do want to have both. You just want to make sure that, like I said, specifically what sport you're training for, what position, and then from there you'll design the program. And then, like I said, just split it up different days and stuff like that.
Makes sense. Excellent. Great. Can you tell me more about the mental side of training? What have you learned as far as the mental side of training?
So dealing with like the youth, one of the main things that I've seen and I've heard this from a few people as well is sometimes you have trainers that get no like physical results from the people that are training, but the people that are training start to live happier lives.
Hmm.
So you might have trainers that technically don't know really what they're doing as far as proper mechanics and stuff like that. But for some reason, that kid now is like super happy to see you and wants to be with you and these type of things. Now, while it is important for the mechanics and all that to be, top notch to reduce the risk of injury, I think one of the most important things is just like kind of like building a relationship with your clients, not to the point where it's like we're super friends and we're like hanging out and all that kind of stuff. You want to kind of have some boundaries, but you want to know about their life, and you want to kind of know them a little bit. So I had this like 13-year-old girl that I was hired to train for soccer, and she's the type of girl that really doesn't like to work out, doesn't want to get sweaty, that whole thing. Most teenage girls and most teenagers, they really just want to be on their phones these days. So with her, like I said, you come in with a game plan. We're going to do this drill, this drill, this drill. I could tell it's not working. Okay. Like when we started off, like the first couple of weeks, she was not interested at all. Didn't even want to kick the ball. It was just like, all right, when are we going home? Over the course of the months, granted, we didn't like start to do drills and stuff like that because I kind of sense like where she's coming from and what she kind of likes, what she doesn't like. So I just started just like literally kicking the ball back to her, just like back and forth. And over the course of like the next month or so, you kind of see her attitude change a little bit, where it's like, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, and which was a huge difference from like coming outside and being like, are we done yet? So just through the course of a month or two, you can start to see like a difference in their life where it's like, hey, mom, I want to, play soccer with some girls at a league or something like that. And she was never like that before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of understanding, you know, your client, building a relationship, and through that, just through building a relationship, you kind of get a sense of who they are mentally. Like sometimes I could tell if somebody's going through something, you know, like even with the kids, like I know like when they're hiding stuff in, I know when they're going through stuff, not just because I've gone through it, but it's just like a sense that I have that is something that you kind of have to take account on with training. Like you'll come out to train and it's like you're in a bad mood because maybe your parents told you something, or maybe this happened at school. So you kind of have to figure out through them, like you kind of have to play like a like it's kind of like psychology.
Right. Yeah.
You kind of like ask certain questions, trying to get to the bottom, like, all right, what's really going on? Just because you want to help them more so than like the training aspect. You just want to help them, you know, be happier, live a better life and all that.
Yeah. Matters a lot, doesn't it? I mean, certainly for adults too, which is, where I know much more about training adults than I do with kids. And that has certainly been the case too. It's like, it almost seems like that's number one. You just have to be in at least a receptive mindset to doing something better for yourself, even if it's the smallest thing to get anywhere physically, or else not even gonna show up, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, it seems to me like what you're doing is you're building these relationships with these kids where they feel good about showing up to their sessions with you. But it also sounds like you're doing you're helping them progress in a very step-by-step way where they're accomplishing little steps along the way. So it seems like they're having a positive experience and they keep going. I'm a huge fan
yeah,
of that if that's what's going on. If you are just having small positive experiences with training or with your sport, I think that matters a lot. That sounds like what's going on.
yeah, exactly. It's because I've had through the course of doing this for so many years, you've had certain clients where it's like you did too much too soon,
Mhm.
and they kind of burn out and they kind of hate it now.
Yeah,
So you can't give them too much at once.
yeah,
Number one, because it'll be like information overload. Like they're not gonna learn that much at once.
right.
And then number two, they're really gonna tire out if you tax them. So if they're doing basketball Monday through Friday, they're gonna be bored with it pretty quickly,
Mhm.
unless you know you develop a program where it's like Monday basketball, Tuesday speed and agility. That all helps with basketball, but it's not like
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah, if they
So
see the
I've had,
components along the way, all the ingredients that matter, if they can see that in structure, yeah, I think that's really
yeah,
smart.
yeah.
Very good stuff. Tell me more about speed, agility, and quickness, the difference between each drills, and how to make that fun for youth.
Yes. So most parents usually think that speed is like the only thing that comes along with that. It's like speed is agility and quickness, and it's not. So
Mhm.
speed is basically how fast you can run it in one direction. Okay, just to put it simply. Agility means basically how you can change your body position to get to certain different points, whether you set out cones like here, and you just have to run to the cone. So that would be kind of agility, adjusting your body to get there quickly and so on. And then quickness is similar concept, except you're adding a stimulus. So if you're, let's say, standing up and a trainer tells you right, you're going to go to your right. Or if it tells you left, you're going to go to your left. And you kind of have to react to it. So that would be more so quickness.
Excellent.
Now, yeah. So the way to kind of make it fun for the kids is, let's say, quickness, for example. Um, I recently bought like one of the laser pointers, and yeah, and for some reason it was a huge hit with the kids because I'm trying to figure out how can I make it fun, enjoyable for them, but they're also like working on their quickness.
Mhm.
So I basically took out the laser one day and I just started pointing it at the ground, like, all right, go to the laser wherever I'm pointing it. By the end of the class, whoever the kid was, it's like yo, can I like keep the laser? And it's like, I mean, you can't keep my laser, but you can ask your parents to get you one.
That's
So
amazing. You've like turned them into like cat toy training. Like, the people take their laser pointer and they
yeah,
get the cats to run around.
yeah,
It apparently works for kids too.
yeah. And I wasn't expecting that. I was just like, all right, what new like equipment can I get to like change things up? And
Mhm.
it's like laser point. It's like, whoa, this is so cool. It's like, yeah, well, you're
That's
right,
awesome.
so
That's awesome
this is
that
good for
works. I've never
yeah.
tried that. That's so cool. Great idea.
And then just in general for like speed, agility, and quickness, it's like for speed, most of the things that I would do are like sprints for the most part. Some of the other things that I would do with speed are just like stationary drills where you're working on like fewer ground contact time because you want to increase your speed, so you don't want your foot on the ground as
Mm.
long as possible. So you're trying to speed up that process through like certain stationary drills. So I do that with some of the kids, and I make it a challenge for them. So it's like, let's say they have to have perfect form. It's like, can you do three in a row with perfect form? And like, ready, set, go, and just see if they do it. And if they only do two, they're like, oh man, I got to do another one. So it's just like adding these little challenges along the way to make it a little bit more fun. So whether it's speed, agility, or quickness, it's, can you do this in 10 seconds? Me knowing that they can do it, but the kids don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I did it.
Yeah.
So certain things like that.
It's really cool. While we're on the topic, can you give me a couple of short explanations of some example speed, agility, or quickness drills you might do with anybody, kids or whoever it may be?
So like for the speed one of the ones I like, I don't know if it has a certain, I don't know what the specific name is, but you're basically standing on one foot with your other knee kind of about hip width, and you got to have proper arm swings. The knee that is up hip width, you're going to quickly press it onto the ground and bring your other knee up to hip width. So basically, the knee is here and your foot is here. You go like down up, down
Mm.
up.
Hmm.
Basically, I call it the 1-2. So it's like 1-2, 1-2, and you try to do that as quickly as you can, trying to keep proper form. And then to kind of progress that, you would just go 1-2-3, 1-2-3. So
Yeah,
you kind of end up, but
it reminds me of the wall drill. Do you ever use the wall drill?
yes, I actually use that with certain kids that need help with their like running form.
Hmm.
Like usually that's the first things that they'll do. Because let's say for running, you don't want to be running on a heel strike, because if your heel hits down on the floor first, you're basically putting the brakes on, and you're putting a little bit too much pressure on your knees, lower back,
Hmm.
hamstrings. So you want to make sure you're running on your midfoot. So I had a couple that could not, that were not doing that. So the wall drill is one of the things that I did incorporate into their training, just so that they can get used to kind of like a forward lean and just that midfoot strike.
That's really cool. And for whoever's listening, the way I know the wall drill is, I know it's a sports performance drill. You can use it for cardio and speed, really for anybody that's ready to do it, obviously. But basically, having your hands against the wall, leaning into the wall, having one knee up, and then quickly switching, usually like three, five, or however many times you do it, switching that knee and then pausing with the knee sometimes. I don't know if you use that, but um, yeah, to get a visual idea of what that is. Really
Yeah,
cool.
for sure.
I would like to know more about running mechanics as far as you mentioned heel striking is kind of like putting on the brakes, right? Um,
Yes.
what what should I know? I like to run. I run casually just because I enjoy it. I like the cardio I get from it. But if I want to be a better runner, what should I know as far as heel strike or toe strike? How can I improve my form?
So just like a quick background, like I said before, like heel strike is basically putting on the brakes. So like let's say when you're running somewhere like a wide receiver or a basketball player, if they want to come to a complete stop, they're going to kind of heel strike to stop. So if you imagine that scenario, if you're doing that consistently with running, then like I said, it's putting pressure on your knees, your hamstrings, your lower back, and you don't want that. Now, that doesn't mean that if you go running today and you start heel striking and you're doing that, that the next day you're going to get hurt. It's something where over the course of time, it's just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. And like I said, we're trying to reduce the injury risk. So we want you running with proper mechanics and stuff like that. If you're running on your midfoot, um, obviously you got better mechanics. Basically, that's the way that you want to kind of run. You want your foot to kind of strike under your hips when you run. So you don't want your foot too far forward when you strike it on the ground. You kind of want it under your hips, and you kind of want a slight forward lean. So not like just like forward lean
Mhm.
whenever you're running. And then, as always, like make sure you got proper arm swings. So, because I see a lot of kids and they'll run with their arms down like this,
Yeah.
and basically it's just like a 90-degree angle moving back and forth.
Mhm. Do you ever train them? I love that, by the way. That I feel like I can instantly become a better runner just by knowing that. That's really cool. That was really good information. Do you ever do, speaking of the arm mechanics with running, do you ever do arm action drills with them?
I usually do it when we do the speed drill. So it's like while they're working on their foot mechanics and like striking the ground, I'll always make sure that their hands are like, make sure you put this hand here, make sure that's there, and then I'll make sure that they do the arm swing. So because I do want them to get used to that concept, because like I said, a lot of them they'll be running great, but their arms are all over the place.
I think about what it was like being in school and kids in general. I imagine, regardless of how they improve in sports or in their fitness or their health, you're probably really helping their confidence a lot too, right? Just from them feeling like they're moving better and they can be in front of their friends and play their sports and feel like, they're doing stuff right. Because everyone's, we're kids and we know we're being watched when we go to games and we're conscious about that. Have you had that experience where they just feel more confident in general?
100%. I think that usually happens honestly with like everybody that I work with. Cause I know when I was a kid, I didn't have this. I don't know if this existed when I was a kid, where it's like someone comes to your house to train you,
I
you
did.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't
So
popular as far as I know.
yeah, so it's like I didn't have someone to kind of guide me of like, you're supposed to shoot the basketball this way. You're supposed to do this way. I just went based off what I saw in games and stuff like that. So, and a lot of the things with confidence is repetition.
Hmm.
So once you know like the proper mechanics, it's just doing it over and over and over again until you get good results and stuff like that. So most of the clients that I work with, let's say they can't make a basketball shot, okay? So they don't feel comfortable playing in the school team or even just in general going out to recess and playing basketball. So by working on their mechanics and doing a lot of repetitions, they become more confident. So they start to see the ball go in the basket, after months of working. And then they suddenly tell their mom or their dad, like, hey, I want to be, on the school team, or I want to go play on a league or something like that. And and I see that a lot with a lot of the kids that I work with. It's like I think a big aspect of like training that probably gets overlooked. Like we all have the knowledge, most of us have the knowledge to like train someone properly, but you have to bring energy. So whenever you go to any training session, you can't just like stand there and be like, all right, do this, all right, do this, all right, do this. And I'm not wired that way. Like I like to have fun, I like to be competitive. So when I'm training someone, like we're having the best time ever, so we're learning. So we're learning, everything we got to learn. But at the same time, I'm having fun with them. Like we're joking around, like we're being serious when it's time to be serious. But then in between, it's like we're just having fun, joking around, that kind of atmosphere where it's not forced, it just comes naturally.
Right.
And I see through that, like how much their life kind of changes, where it's like, hey, are you coming, to train me today? Hey, I'll see you next week, or this or that. So it's a great feeling.
That's excellent. Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of satisfaction from that. And yeah, or you have to match you have to match the energy you want them to bring, right? You kind of have to be
Yeah,
immersive in it. Yeah, totally
yeah.
get it. It's
And then,
it's like
and then conversely, there are times where it's like you have a client that just drains the energy out of you,
yeah, right,
where it's like they'll come out and it's like, dude, I'm trying, but you're not giving me anything.
right.
And that kind of like, on the other spectrum, that kind of like, it's like a dead point. It's like, I don't know what else to do with you. So
Sure.
you kind of have to balance and, you know, figure that stuff out too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. In the end, like you said, it's a relationship. You're spending a lot of time around another person. You're going to feed off
Yeah.
each other a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, you touched on foot mechanics, which was going to be my next question. So thank you for that. That was really good. Is there anything else on foot mechanics that you didn't say that you'd like to mention?
Maybe on like the deceleration,
Sure.
like when we're going just real quickly, because I know a lot of people don't know this. When you're running backwards and you're trying to stop, so like just so that everybody knows, deceleration is trying to come to a stop, acceleration is trying to speed up and go forward. So when you're trying to stop going backwards into an acceleration, you want to plant your foot on the ground where it's like your toe is extended, but your heel is not touching the ground. So you're going backwards. You don't want the heel to touch the ground. You kind of want to end up like this so that you can explode off of that and go forward. What could happen when you come from a heel down into an acceleration, you could suffer like calf injuries and, more like importantly, your Achilles eventually could tear.
Hmm.
So, and I learned that from like human anatomy courses as well, that you don't want to come from a heel down into a quick acceleration. So when you are going backwards, like I said, toe is extended here, heel is not down, and then you just accelerate forward. Just a little quick little thing that I wanted to add on to that.
That's great. And that makes sense. Um, yeah. That could apply, that applies to, I mean, I'm trying to think of what sport do you not decelerate going backwards, where you are essentially running backwards and you have to bring yourself to a stop. I can't think of any really. So that applies
Not,
universally almost.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
pretty
really,
much.
that's really useful. That's really cool. Um, can you tell me, so since we're talking about biomechanics, can you tell me more about any insight you have as far as biomechanics or knee over toe stuff, anything like that?
Um, I'll tell you like a little, not story, but a little like thing that happened recently with like this football player. They were playing like a football game on turf, and he was just jogging, like a regular jog, and all of a sudden he planted his foot and he tore his ACL. And there was a big debate on social media and just the internet, like everyone thinking that the turf is what caused the ACL tear. Now, most like knee injuries and ACL tears are caused by like weak hamstrings, because your hand, like I said, you have to decelerate when you're running. So if your hamstrings are kind of weak, then you can't really absorb the force from that deceleration. So if your hamstrings are weak, everything's moving forward, your knees start going out a little bit, that's when you could possibly get some knee injuries, some ACL tears. So we want to make sure that because like I said, a lot of people were blaming the turf, but most likely it's just poor biomechanics of like probably off-season training, um, prior injury history. I know that specific player had, an Achilles tear in the past. So it's just as a trainer, knowing, like I said, knowing the program, knowing in order to reduce the risk of injury, you got to make sure all your muscles and everything are strengthened. Because you'll see a lot of, like on this topic too, like a lot of people squat with their heels elevated,
Mhm,
like on a slant board or something.
mhm.
And what happens when you do that, again, you're putting a lot of pressure on your knee when you're doing that because of the angle of your legs and stuff like that. So, because there's a lot of gimmicks nowadays in social media where it's like, hey, I just found a new way to do this. But it's like, have you read the science behind that? So,
Right.
like I said, through biomechanics, we learned, like when I went to the seminar, we learned how to do a proper squat, a proper lunge, a proper deadlift, push, pull, anti-rotation, walking and running mechanics. So we learn the proper way based on science of like how to do it correctly so that you're not putting a lot of stress on the ligaments, and all that.
Sure. Um, yeah, it makes me think um, in my experience, it's hard for the common person to find out the proper body mechanics for those movements and why it's important. Where would someone learn that if they're not working with a trainer? Honestly, where are we supposed to learn that if we haven't worked with a trainer?
You really don't, because like that's why they have these seminars and all this stuff. It's like you got to kind of go get educated if this
Yeah,
is the field that you want to be in. And because it's like I said, like I want people to live better lives. So
yeah,
like I don't want to train someone if I don't know what I'm doing, you
right.
know? So like I kind of want to have the answer to everything so that if you ask me a question, I could be like, all right, this is exactly what's going on.
Hmm.
You don't have to break it scientifically for them because they might not understand it, but break it down so that they can understand, where you're coming from, what it's doing, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's not something that you can just find on the internet. Like there are a lot of things that are free on the internet that are studies and science based and all that. But when I went to these seminars, they had research papers and like hundreds and thousands of studies that you can't just find on the internet. So it's not something that you Google and it's like, yeah, I found it. No,
Yeah.
like this stuff is not findable.
Yeah, I was just talking with a client um about this, kind of like you said, there is great stuff on the internet if you know how to find it. Like there's an abundance of information, right? So there's good information, bad information, useful, not useful. But you're right. The nitty-gritty details or the whole story of things that you wouldn't think matter but does, especially when it comes to body mechanics, I think that'd be real. I wouldn't know where to find anything as specific as what we find in our personal training textbooks or when we go to
Yeah,
specialized seminars that are marketed towards trainers. It's hard to find this information as a regular person. So that's why I want people to know and have a relationship with you and myself and other people that are experts in this area because it makes at least fitness and other parts of wellness much easier to achieve because you're not wasting any time getting bad information. And I think when you
right,
spend time around people that know this stuff and are living this stuff, have been through it themselves, and are teaching and are current examples and demonstrating how to do this, it really saves a person a lot of time and probably a lot of injury. And we both work on injury prevention and
yeah,
how important that is because you want to maximize your training and do the best training you can. Um, but part of that equation is making sure you can do it and you can push yourself in a safe way. So,
right.
yeah.
Because I remember I had this mom that I was training, and she was telling me like she had a little bit of shoulder pain and some knee pain as well. So basically, when but not knee pain where it was like extreme, just like a little bit discomfort.
Mhm.
Who knows from what? I'm not a physical therapist, but when we were working out, like I kind of showed her how to do lunges correctly, and while she was doing them, she's like, "Oh my god, I don't
Knee
feel it
feels
in my
better.
knee anymore."
Yeah, right, right.
So
We're,
it's like,
yeah, we're hurting ourselves on a daily basis when we don't really know how to move, right? That goes
yeah,
for that goes for myself. I had knee pain and back pain when I was in my teens. That was before I really started working out, and it was long before I got certified as a trainer and pursued a career. But yeah, a lot of issues that I've seen too, that people have normal aches and pains that they might think are normal. They don't have to be. Maybe they're just not
right,
moving right, and they never learned how to move their body properly. Right?
right, and it's like one of those things where it's like you think your knee pain is coming from your knee, but it could be coming from your hips, from your
Mm-hmm.
ankle. You
Yep.
know, you don't know where it's coming from until you get a proper, diagnosis and stuff
Right.
like that.
Right. And there's different professionals that people can see for that depending on the issue. Let's be
Yeah,
clear, personal trainers and
yeah,
whatever specializations we have, we're not here to diagnose or treat any medical issue. There's a time to talk to a trainer, and there's a time to talk to a doctor or someone similar. And
correct. I think it's important to have those connections with
mm,
like a physical therapist, with a nutritionist, so that if somebody, whether they're dealing with pain or they want to change their diet, it's like, all right, go to this person. Because,
yeah,
like you said, we're personal trainers. I'm not a nutritionist, even though you know a lot about it. We're still not, you know, a registered nutritionist, dietitian, all
right.
that stuff. We're not like a physical therapist. So while we do have some general information, it's better to go, to the experts for that,
Absolutely.
answer.
Absolutely. And people need to know there are experts for all these areas. You can see a registered dietitian, you can see a personal trainer, you can see a
Yeah.
therapist. There are many people with expertise out there that are, that are there to help. And that's why we're talking today, because I want people to have relationships with people like us and others that can help them. The more I learn about the fitness community, the wellness community, the more I realize the relationship with the expert is always going to be majorly more beneficial than trying to go it alone. And
Yeah.
it's always important to educate yourself, absolutely. But there are people there along the way to help you, and they help tremendously. So if you don't mind, I've got just a couple quick questions I want to ask you that are more general, if that's cool. Um,
Yeah.
so for the fitness community out there, we're talking with Nick, who specializes in sports performance for youth. But I want to know more about you for a moment. What kind of training do you do for yourself to stay in shape?
Okay. So basically, to kind of put this really simple, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I go to the gym for like strength training. So, and I'll divide up the workouts. Like Monday would be like a push day, Wednesday would be a pull day, Friday legs. So for those that don't know, push is like chest press, shoulder press, that kind of stuff. Pull is like biceps, it's called lat pull down, stuff like that. And then legs will be like squats, lunges, all different type variety of movements. So usually I try to get in 3 good gym workouts a day. And then like on a Tuesday and Thursday, I'll
Every
go to
week,
like
right?
the
Not a day.
field per week. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
3 per week.
Mhm.
And then Tuesday, Thursday, I'll head to the field and I'll do some like hip mobility, ankle mobility, as well as like conditioning and sprints. So I think it's very important, like as we kind of get older, that we don't neglect like your hips, your ankles, your knees, basically all your joints. You don't want to just focus on like, all right, squat, 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 and that's all you do. Like you
Right.
want to make sure you're working your hip strength, your mobility, your core. Again, your core does not just mean your abs, it's your hips, your lower back, the whole thing. So, like I said, for me, I go to the gym about 3 times a week and then to the field 2 times a week to do mobility and conditioning.
So Nick, right now your workout is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, strength stuff in the gym, Tuesday, Thursday, mobility and field drills, right? And then weekends, are you resting on the weekends?
Yeah, weekends. So like weekends, I usually work most of the day. So that's kind of like my cardio, I guess you could say. So I'm not really doing anything extra aside from all the trainings that I have.
Got it. Got it. That's
And
excellent.
then also like because everybody has different goals. Like for me, I'm just trying to like get leaner,
Mhm.
get more cut up. And I started doing this back in January, so it's not like, hey, next month we're gonna be where we're at. This takes a year. This takes a couple of years to get to your ideal, you know, body that you wanna kind of get to. But because you have, if you're trying to like build muscle and get bigger, you want to kind of like progressively overload. So let's say you're doing 2 sets this week. Next week you're going to do 3 sets. Then the following week we're going to do 4 sets. So I think it's important too to understand like specifically what you want to do with like your workouts. If you want to just stay where you're at and just get leaner, we'll design a program for that. If you want to build muscle, get bigger, you can design a program for that. So it's just a matter of where you're at.
Good stuff. Absolutely. You really said some great stuff today. Um, if you were out of shape, you kind of already answered this, but if you were out of shape, just suddenly
Yeah.
totally out of shape, whatever, you're lost all your muscle mass, you feel like your endurance went down, whatever, you've been on the couch for whatever. What are the top 3 things you would do as soon as possible to get yourself back into shape?
Number one, walking.
Okay.
I think walking is like one of the most underrated things that people can do because it doesn't put a lot of pressure on your joints. So anybody could go walking. So if you're overweight or obese and you could go outside and just go for a 30-minute walk, go do that. So I would say walking is one of the most, you know, beneficial things that you could do. Second, I mean, assuming we don't know anything about their nutrition, I would just say that to
Just be
clean
for
that
you.
up
Like, what would you do personally?
personally, I would just like clean up the nutrition, making sure you're getting the right vitamins and nutrients into your body. Because there's certain days where you feel like you don't have energy, you don't know what's going on. So make sure that you are getting the right nutrients, getting the right vitamins. I know for me, I'm trying to still lose a little bit of weight. So I'm on a calorie deficit. So with the calorie deficit, you don't want to be at it too low. So you want to be somewhere between 250 to 500 less calories than what you're burning. So that's what I'm currently doing. And it's working for me. And it usually works for everybody that's trying to lose weight. Again, there's no like quick, easy fix to like lose weight because let's say you're on a calorie deficit and you're burning 2,500 and you're only eating 1,000. Yeah, you're going to drop some weight in a week, but you're going to regain it really quickly because you're not getting the nutrients that you need. So a week from now, you're going to start overeating to get what you need, and then you're just going to pack those pounds back on. So it's important to keep your calorie deficit at a manageable level.
Man, I can't tell
Um,
you how many times. Sorry to interrupt, but that was
yeah,
a big talking point throughout my career with personal training clients is losing the weight too fast. I like your perspective on it. Um, when you lose it, when you have a calorie deficit, that's so great. Um, it being a nutrient thing that you're not getting enough. But also, we would talk about how if you're losing so fast, likely you're losing muscle as well. What happens
yeah,
when your muscle tone goes down and you lose the muscle and you go back to eating normally at a healthy or more sustainable way of eating, you gain it back, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And so, sorry, tell me anything else? Is there a third thing you do?
Um, I would say, I think, like I said, the most important things if you're trying to get in shape is some sort of cardio, whether that's walking if you're just starting out. You could go biking, or you could go into the more intense stuff if you are at that level. So pick whatever cardio thing that you want. Make sure your nutrition is on point for whatever your goal is. And then third thing, just strength train. So some people think that if you strength train, you're not gonna lose weight, but you kind of are because you're turning your kind of fat into muscle, so to speak. So don't neglect like strength training if you're trying to get in shape. You don't have to start at it, you know, chest press like benching 200 pounds. Just go light, work your way up, and you'll get where you got to go.
Right, right. The way I like to look at it is, so when we train cardio, our heart rate is elevated. So we're burning calories then during the session, right? We burn
Yep,
calories when we do our strength training too, but the heart rate's not usually as elevated as cardio training. But
correct.
what does having muscle mass do to the body and do to your metabolism? It goes up. So you're burning more calories even when your heart rate is not elevated. So that's one of the reasons I explain to people, if for many people trying to lose weight, a mix of strength and cardio, elevating the heart rate during
Mm-hmm.
training, keeping the keeping the calories burning outside of training through having that lean muscle on you, raising your metabolism.
Yeah.
That's how I like to picture it. Yeah, really cool. Um, and then I got one more question for you. What are some of your more frequently asked questions that you get from clients or anybody you've worked with that you can answer better now that you've addressed them throughout the years?
One of the main ones that I get usually with the parents is like, I want my kid to get faster, but I know he can't. And it's like he actually could get faster. Like there's specific, program and drills to increase your speed. So that's one that I'll usually get. And like obviously when I tell the parents that, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that." And it's like, yeah. So we can improve your kids' speed and stuff like that. Some other things that I've been asked,
Can I,
usually
can I
for
pause
the
you on that? I'm sorry. I want to pause you on
yeah.
that because I think that's a really interesting point because you make me think of how much are parents a limiting factor in a kid's success when they work in sports or with a trainer. I've run into it. Have you run into that often?
I have like on both spectrums of either pushing the kid too hard where it's like he doesn't want to do it anymore, or just like a knowledge thing of it's like, yeah, you're supposed to do it this way, but really you're not, And it's not their fault. They just don't
Mhm.
So it's like we studied for this, we, done our stuff. So it's like we know kind of what to expect. Um, just to like bring it out of the topic for a second, kind of tie this in.
Mhm.
Like I teach bike riding lessons to kids too. And you would think like that's a huge like thing for a dad or a mom to like feel and for them to do on their own.
Mhm.
But the amount of requests that I get to teach kids biking is like, and the parents will tell me like, I don't have the patience for it.
Mhm.
I can't, I don't know, I just can't do it. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And this happened the other day where it's like I was teaching this kid, he learned how to bike, and I pushed him, let him go, he started biking. And then, the mom wanted to try and she pushed him and he fell down. Now we do it on the grass so that they don't get hurt,
Sure.
initially. But like something as little as that is like you don't know how to like push the kid correctly so that they can stay balanced
Oh,
and
yeah.
on the bike.
Yeah.
So it's like little things like that,
Yeah.
you know, they just
Wow.
don't know. It's not their fault. They
Sure.
just don't know.
Sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd never thought about that. My dad taught me how to ride a bike and we went down the sidewalk and he seemed like he did great with it and I eventually learned how to do it. But I never thought about like, yeah, it takes a person with knowledge of how to move their body to at least push their kid right with the bike, right?
Right? It's like I don't know how to explain it. I just have like a certain sense of like the first session that I have for bike riding, and it could be for anything. Like I can sense if you can stay balanced on a bike, how exactly how long it'll take you.
Hmm.
Will it take you like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Like I can kind of sense that. So, like I said, it wasn't something that, and this is like a side business, the bike riding thing. Like it wasn't something that I wanted to like market. Like, hey, I'm gonna do bike riding lessons. It was just like out of the blue, one person asked me like, hey, can you teach my kid how to ride a bike? And I'm like, sure. So I taught one kid, and then obviously word of mouth starts spreading.
Yeah.
And by now it's like between 50 to 100 kids.
Wow.
And it's like, yeah, it's like something you didn't expect.
I did.
And it's like this
Yeah.
many people. Like, it's not something that's like you would think, but it's like this
No,
many people want me to teach their kids. Like, what?
I didn't even know there was a market for that. People to teach your kid to ride a bike.
I didn't
No
either
idea.
until a year ago. Like, this literally happened
Yeah.
like a year ago.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, okay, might as well.
That's amazing. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So how long normally does it take for someone to learn to ride a bike?
1 to 5 lessons, depending on the age. Like the younger you are, you might go like 6, 7, 8.
Mhm.
But everybody that I've taught has been like 1 to 5 lessons. It's similar to training. It's just like getting the fear out of your head.
Yeah.
So a lot of things with that, like I just like to take them on the grass, like turf or like short grass, and just do it there. Because usually when they fall on the grass, they're like, "Oh my god, this was actually fun."
Yeah. That's a
So
vibe. Right.
yeah,
That's so cool. I had no idea that was a something so in demand, but
yeah,
now I know. So if anybody out
yeah,
there has got kids or needs to learn how to ride a bike, Nick's your man.
yeah.
Is there anything else that would be useful for our audience that you think needs to be addressed? Anything else you'd like to talk about?
Um, Maybe just a little bit on kind of understand like when dealing with like youth performance and sports and confidence and that kind of stuff, like with parents, um, and even with bike riding and just stuff in general. Like you don't want to like put too much pressure on the kids to learn something because they feel that pressure. So I think it's important, and this is just in general, it could be parents, it could be just regular people. I think it's important that when you're dealing with kids, like they feel loved and appreciated and the whole thing, and constantly like, hey, you're doing a great job. Like they might not be doing a great job, but just hearing like what I did good, like that could do wonders for their confidence. So I think it's important not to like, hey, you got to get this today. No, you got to do this now. You got to do this by now. No, it's like there's no limits. Like there, whether we learn today or next week or next month, we'll learn it. Like there's no pressure.
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the things that I also experience is like a little too much pressure being put on the kids. And again, they're kids. They just want to have fun. You know, it's our job to make sure that they're, not getting hurt, doing things correctly. But it's also important to understand that they're kids. They want to have fun. Whether you're 8 years old, 13, 15, you're still like young. So it's like
Mhm.
understanding that.
So you're using positive reinforcement. How well is that working?
I mean, based on the like reactions, it's like great because it's like at the end of every lesson, it's like, hey, I'll see you tomorrow, or hey, I'll see you next week, or
Yeah.
or just wanting to give me a high five, or just like smiling,
Yeah.
like looking back if they did a bike ride, or looking at me after they did like something new on the basketball court, like, oh my god, I did it. So it's like, yeah, I know you could do it. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of putting in the work.
Yeah. I think you're doing a lot more for kids than just sports performance. I think
Yeah,
really matters. These kids have a good experience, whether it's sports or not, but with anyone that helps them believe in themselves, I think that's massively important. So I think that's really good that you're doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because a lot of these kids, Some of them are on the younger side, like 8, 9, 10. So you're gonna have plenty of time as you continue to build the relationship to perfect certain things, to perfect their squatting, their lunges, or this. But if they don't like feel your energy and like your love and all that right away, then you're not gonna get to like let's say the fun stuff later on where you really want to train them. So it's important that you understand that, you know, whether they're 8 years old, 9 years old, it's like they want to have fun. Okay. How do we incorporate at least conditioning? Conditioning can be fun for anybody. So it's important to incorporate, that into your program design.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Yeah, that's it. Man, Nick, you said some really good stuff today, and um, I really think you're doing a good thing for kids, and obviously it's working for them, and you're successful, and I see the demand that's there. So, whoever's watching this, if you're in tell me what part of Florida you're working in?
Anywhere from Aventura, sometimes Miami Beach. So Aventura, Sunny Isles, Bal Harbor, Miami Beach, sometimes depending on the schedule, but those areas.
So anybody with kids looking to get into being better at their sport, riding a bike, or anything as far as their physical activity, get in touch with Nick, and I think you'll be in good hands, Nick. Man, it sounds like you're really good, doing great stuff. So congrats on that. So tell us how we can get in touch with you if we want to find you.
On basically on all socials, it's going to be NPT Fit. NPT stands for Nick's Performance Training. I just shortened it to NPT because I think it sounds cool,
Yeah,
and that's like my thing. So NPT Fit on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, the whole thing. So
excellent. Go find Nick. Thank you, Nick, for coming on, and that's it. Appreciate the time.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.